They told him his new identity would be simple. Too simple, in fact, which was exactly why it terrified him more than any armed infiltration he had ever done. No fake explosions, no midnight raids, no high-speed chases across foreign borders. Just a backpack, a student ID, and a life built on pretending to be young, naive, and harmless. His real name had been erased, sealed in a file marked classified, and replaced with two ordinary syllables that tasted strange in his mouth. From that day on, he was a 21-year-old literature student with average grades, a mild personality, and a tendency to get lost on campus. He memorized his fake past the way he once memorized blueprints of enemy facilities. Parents divorced. Scholarship kid. Loves instant noodles. Afraid of cockroaches. Everything designed to make him forgettable. Xiao Zhang wore the disguise effortlessly, which was both his gift and his curse. With his calm eyes and gentle smile, he blended in so well that even he sometimes forgot he was not supposed to belong here. The mission was clear: identify a covert network using the university as a recruitment ground for information theft and tech laundering. Intelligence suggested that the leader was hiding in plain sight, possibly among students, possibly among faculty. The timeline was tight. The stakes were lethal. Failure was not an option. And yet, no briefing had prepared him for the sound of laughter echoing between old buildings, or the way sunlight fell across the library steps in the afternoon, or how dangerously easy it felt to be normal. On his first day of class, he arrived 10 minutes early, chose a seat near the back, and practiced looking bored. The girl next to him dropped her notebook, and when he bent down to pick it up, their heads collided. The impact was minor. The embarrassment was catastrophic. She laughed so hard she snorted, and he, trained assassin of silence and shadows, froze like a guilty child. For a split second, he forgot his cover and almost apologized with his real name. He caught himself just in time, smiling awkwardly, rubbing his forehead, and mumbling something about not having enough sleep. From that moment on, the mission began to slip sideways. He told himself it was fine. Emotional distance was a skill he had mastered years ago. He could laugh, joke, even care a little, as long as he never crossed the line. But the line blurred quickly on campus. He joined group projects, endured cafeteria food, and pretended to struggle with exams he could finish in 10 minutes. He learned to complain about professors and celebrate canceled classes. He even learned the art of looking busy while doing absolutely nothing, a skill far more complex than dismantling a bomb. The humor came first, sneaking up on him when he least expected it. He tripped over a scooter and spilled coffee all over his white shirt, only to discover that pretending to panic was much harder than remaining calm under fire. He was forced to participate in a talent show for extra credit, where he sang off-key on purpose and earned thunderous applause for his so-called bravery. His teammates nicknamed him Grandpa because he went to bed early and refused to play online games past midnight, unaware that his real reason was encrypted communication windows with headquarters. But beneath the laughter, the tension never left. Every smile could hide a threat. Every conversation might contain a clue. He listened more than he spoke, storing fragments of information like puzzle pieces. A suspicious scholarship fund. A professor with unexplained foreign transfers. A student group that met too often and asked too many questions. At night, while his roommates slept, he typed reports in the dark, his screen dimmed, his heart strangely heavy. The danger escalated the day he realized someone was watching him. It started with small things. A bag moved slightly from where he left it. A question asked twice by different people in different places. A shadow lingering a second too long. His instincts screamed, old and reliable, cutting through the illusion of safety. The campus was no longer just a stage for comedy. It was a minefield. And worst of all, he had begun to care about the people walking across it. The emotional conflict hit him hardest when he was forced to choose between the mission and a classmate who had unknowingly wandered too close to the truth. Protecting her meant altering his plan, risking exposure. Letting things proceed meant using her as bait, something the old version of him might have done without hesitation. He stared at his reflection in the bathroom mirror that night, the fluorescent light revealing a face that looked young, kind, and utterly unprepared for the decision he had to make. He chose to protect her. That choice triggered a chain reaction of chaos, comedy, and heartbreak. He began making mistakes on purpose, drawing suspicion away from her and toward himself. He acted more foolish, more forgetful, more human. His friends laughed, teased him, dragged him into silly adventures that ended with shared umbrellas in the rain and late-night conversations about dreams and fears. Each moment chipped away at the armor he had spent years building. When the truth finally came out, it did not arrive with explosions or sirens. It came quietly, in a nearly empty classroom, with dust floating in the sunlight and a single question asked in a trembling voice. "Are you really who you say you are?" For the first time in his life, Xiao Zhang did not know how to lie. The revelation was devastating. Shock turned into anger, anger into tears, tears into a silence heavier than any punishment he had endured before. The mission reached its climax as the network was exposed, arrests made, secrets dragged into the light. He succeeded. Officially, it was a flawless operation. Unofficially, it cost him everything he had learned to love. The final scene was not a dramatic goodbye at an airport or a heroic sacrifice. It was a simple walk across campus, backpack slung over his shoulder, student ID no longer valid, heart aching with words left unsaid. As he passed the library steps, laughter echoed again, just as it had on his first day. This time, it did not pull him in. It followed him like a ghost. Yet the story did not end in despair. Months later, when the danger had passed and the world had shifted back into place, he returned, not as an agent, not as a student, but as a man finally honest about who he was. The reunion was awkward, emotional, and unexpectedly funny, full of tears mixed with laughter, accusations softened by time, and a fragile hope rebuilt from truth instead of lies. Because sometimes, the most dangerous mission is not going undercover. It is choosing to be seen. And now, ask yourself again, if love exposes the deepest secret, is it still worth the risk? If this story made you laugh, ache, or gasp, leave a comment with your thoughts, like if you felt the tension, and subscribe so you don't miss the next secret waiting to be revealed. What no one expected, especially him, was that returning as an honest man turned out to be far more terrifying than living as a liar. Xiao Zhang thought facing armed enemies was difficult. He was wrong. Facing people who knew his real name, his fake name, his bad singing voice, his embarrassing habit of talking in his sleep, and the fact that he once mistook chili sauce for strawberry jam in the dorm kitchen was infinitely worse. The first day he stepped back onto campus, not as a student but as a guest, destiny immediately mocked him. He slipped. Not metaphorically. Literally. Right in front of the cafeteria. On the same spot where he once spilled coffee all over himself. The universe, apparently, had a sense of humor and excellent memory. Students gasped. Someone screamed. Someone else laughed. And there he was, former elite agent, rolling dramatically on the ground like a tragic actor in a low-budget comedy. When he stood up, dust clinging to his coat, the first face he saw was hers. Arms crossed. Eyebrow raised. Expression unreadable. "So," she said calmly, "is this part of your training too?" Advanced falling techniques. The tension shattered. Laughter exploded around them, and for the first time since the mission ended, Xiao Zhang laughed without calculating the sound, without worrying who might hear, without checking exits. He laughed so hard his eyes watered, and when he looked at her again, the anger he feared was still there, but softened, tangled with disbelief, relief, and something dangerously close to affection. They did not reconcile instantly. Reality was not that kind. Drama demanded payment. She made him earn it. She made him carry boxes during a club event until his arms trembled. She made him attend study sessions where he was absolutely forbidden from answering questions too quickly, because former secret agents are not allowed to destroy academic self-esteem. She forced him to apologize publicly for disappearing without explanation, which turned into a bizarre confession session where half the room thought he was joking and the other half suspected he was filming a prank show. Humor followed him like karma. He was invited to give a motivational talk, only to realize halfway through that the projector was displaying his old student ID photo instead of his slides, the one where his hair stuck out like a confused hedgehog. The audience applauded wildly, assuming this was intentional symbolism about embracing your past mistakes. But beneath the laughter, drama simmered. Old enemies did not vanish just because a mission ended. Shadows lingered. Threats whispered. One night, when laughter faded and the campus lights dimmed, danger returned quietly, reminding him that his world could never be completely simple. This time, though, he was not alone. When trouble surfaced again, she stood beside him, trembling but stubborn, refusing to be pushed away. "You don't get to protect me by lying anymore," she said, voice breaking. "You protect me by trusting me." That sentence hit harder than any bullet. The final confrontation was chaotic, intense, and painfully human. There were no perfect plans. Only improvisation, courage, and a former agent trying desperately not to let anyone get hurt. When it ended, when the threat finally dissolved into handcuffs and sirens, Xiao Zhang collapsed onto the pavement, laughing hysterically from pure emotional overload. She sat next to him, equally exhausted. "You know," she said between breaths, "my college life was supposed to be boring." He turned to her, eyes shining. "I can still pretend to be boring if you want." She snorted. "Too late. I already dated a fake student who turned out to be a real disaster." Silence followed. Heavy. Fragile. Then he spoke, softer than ever. "No more disguises. No missions. Just me. If that's not enough, I'll walk away." Drama held its breath. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached out and flicked his forehead. "Hard." He hissed. "That," she said, smiling through tears, "is for lying." She flicked him again. "And that is for leaving." Then she leaned her head on his shoulder. "And this," she whispered, "is for coming back." Around them, campus life continued. Laughter echoed. Someone argued about grades. Someone played music too loud. Ordinary chaos wrapped around an extraordinary story. Xiao Zhang looked up at the familiar buildings and realized something shocking. The most dangerous role he had ever played was not pretending to be a student. It was choosing to stay. And somehow, against all odds, that was the role that finally felt real. But peace, he learned too late, was only another disguise. Just when life began to feel dangerously normal, curiosity crept in like a whisper that refused to fade. Why did the security lights near the old science building suddenly stay on all night? Why did unfamiliar faces appear on campus? People who didn't laugh too loud or walk too fast, people whose eyes scanned instead of saw. And why did headquarters, silent for weeks, send him a single encrypted message containing only one sentence? "You are not the only one embedded." That was when unease tightened around his chest. Xiao Zhang tried to ignore it. He tried to believe that this was paranoia, the residue of a life lived too long in shadows. He laughed louder, stayed longer at campus cafes, allowed himself to be teased, dragged into ridiculous stares, even forced to wear a ridiculous mascot costume during a university festival. The crowd roared with laughter as he tripped over oversized shoes, and for a moment, curiosity retreated. But at night, when the laughter died, questions screamed. Someone else had been undercover here. Someone who never left. The discovery came accidentally, which made it worse. A misplaced phone. A locked folder. A familiar encryption pattern hidden inside what looked like a harmless research file. His breath slowed as his fingers hovered over the screen. He knew that code. He had used it. He had sworn never to see it again. And the signature was recent. Someone was still playing a game that should have ended. His smile began to falter in public. She noticed immediately. "You're doing that thing again," she said one evening, watching him stir melted ice in his drink. "What thing?" he asked too quickly. "The thing where you pretend everything's fine," she replied, eyes sharp. "You do it when you're about to disappear." That word hung between them like a threat. Disappear. He promised her he wouldn't. He promised himself he meant it. But curiosity is a dangerous addiction, and once it sinks its teeth in, it demands answers. The clues unraveled slowly, teasingly. A student who never appeared in group photos. A teaching assistant whose records were incomplete. A campus club that officially didn't exist but somehow always had funding. Every trail led deeper, pulling him back into the world he tried to escape. And then came the twist he never anticipated. The person behind it all wasn't an enemy. It was a mirror. A former agent like him, younger, colder, still believing that missions mattered more than people. Someone who had watched him from afar, studying his transformation, judging his weakness, waiting for proof that attachment made agents useless. You failed, the message said when it finally arrived. You chose love. Now prove it didn't destroy you. That was when fear changed shape. Because this time, the threat wasn't to his life. It was to his choice. He stood at the edge of campus that night, wind cutting through him, watching lights flicker on in dorm rooms filled with ordinary dreams. Behind him was a past that refused to let go. In front of him was a future that could shatter if he stepped wrong. And somewhere in between was her, unaware that curiosity had already set the trap. The question was no longer whether he could survive another mission. The question was this: would uncovering the truth cost him the very life he fought so hard to keep? And as he turned back toward the campus, heart pounding, one thought burned brighter than fear. Some secrets don't want to be exposed. They want to be chosen. The night he finally told her the truth, the sky was strangely clear, as if the world itself was holding its breath. They sat on the steps behind the old auditorium, the place students avoided, because the lights flickered and the wind always sounded like whispers. He chose it deliberately. Secrets, he had learned, deserved honest places. His hands were steady, but his heart was not. There's something I didn't finish, he said softly. She didn't interrupt. She never did when his voice sounded like that. There was another agent, he continued. Still here. Watching. Testing me. Silence stretched, heavy and sharp. She exhaled slowly. And you just found out now? He shook his head. I suspected. I didn't want it to be true. She laughed once, bitter and shaky. Of course you didn't. Drama did not explode. It simmered. That was worse. Are we in danger? She asked. He met her eyes and did not lie. Yes, but not the way you think. That was when he explained everything. The mirror agent. The twisted test. The idea that love was a weakness, that choosing an ordinary life was the ultimate failure. With every word, he expected her to pull away, to regret staying. Instead, she grew quiet. So, she said at last, someone is judging you for being human. He nodded. She stood up abruptly, brushing dust from her jeans. That's ridiculous. He blinked. That's it. She turned to face him, eyes blazing. You risked your life, lost your identity, and nearly broke your heart, and someone thinks the problem is that you cared too much? Then, unexpectedly, she laughed. A real laugh. Loud. Unfiltered. I knew it, she said. Your world is insane. The humor broke something open in him. He laughed too, breathless, almost hysterical, until the tension cracked and left behind clarity. That was when he made his decision. He would not run. He would not return to the shadows. And he would not play someone else's game. The confrontation came quietly, exactly as he predicted. No chase. No chaos. Just two men standing beneath a broken street lamp, one carrying the weight of who he used to be, the other clinging to what he thought strength looked like. You changed, the mirror agent said coldly. You softened. Yes, Xiao Zhang replied calmly. And I survived. You abandoned the mission. I completed it, he said. I just didn't abandon myself. The other man hesitated. That hesitation was everything. Because doubt, once planted, grows fast. When authorities arrived, it was already over. Not because of force, but because the truth had nowhere left to hide. The test failed. The judge was exposed. And the idea that love was weakness collapsed under its own emptiness. Weeks later, campus life returned to its familiar rhythm. Midterms. Laughter. Complaints about coffee prices. Ordinary chaos. Xiao Zhang no longer scanned crowds. He no longer flinched at shadows. He learned how to be awkward on purpose, how to be late without an excuse, how to plan weekends instead of exits. He learned, slowly, how to stay. On graduation day, he stood among students, not wearing a disguise, not carrying a secret, just holding her hand as the crowd cheered. When she squeezed his fingers and whispered, "So what are you now?" he smiled. "Someone who tells the truth," he answered. Even when it's scary. She leaned her head on his shoulder, and for the first time, there was no mission waiting, No curiosity pulling him back into darkness. Only a future that didn't need a cover story. And if anyone ever wondered how a secret agent disappeared without a trace, the answer was simple. He didn't vanish. He chose to live. And that, in the end, was the most daring operation of all.